And so you're watching your friends, your closest friends, somebody that you hang out with every single day, get shot and killed. And so it's like, what are you going to do about that? The law and authority is not doing anything about it. You probably have other people from other neighborhoods who are taunting your friend in music or in other areas of life about it. And I don't know, it just feels hopeless. And so to understand all of that, there is a generation of trauma being passed down. And so as a policy person, as an urban planner, I don't know of any mental health facilities in our neighborhoods. Could you speak to the role that mental health has when it comes to this issue? And how can we also provide more safety? How did the city of Boston go about making sure that the kids that you surveyed for your research, who were saying, I don't feel safe, over time felt safe and not have to carry weapons?
Well, it's a big question, but I think we do know that there are lots of good programs out there that work with kids, that bring people in, as Ted said, from the street workers, people who've been on the streets. It doesn't do you any good to bring somebody in from the suburbs who's never lived that lifestyle and try to relate to the kids. That's not going to happen. But somebody who they knew, who's the older brother or the uncle of somebody who's on the streets today, they know what the kids are seeing, they know what they're feeling. But we also have to be frank and true with young people that, you know, the statistics that Ted cited, that you're much more likely to have a gun used against you than use it to protect yourself. So we need to sort of think through, how can we do things that will, when a kid feels most vulnerable, there's a place for them to go for help, to go for support. And it won't be the police, but it could be a program, it could be a street worker. We have some great street workers in Boston that have long-term relationship with young people who know what they're going against, and if there's all of a sudden word on the street that someone's out going to take a shot at someone, they can get in there, and they call them violence interrupters, and they can get in there and sort of help that young person stay safe. But at the same time, when we did some work with some of those programs, it became a lot more, if you just deal with the young person on the street, you're not going to make a difference.
Right.
It's got to be the whole family and the extended family that is all, you know, if this is a family where nobody's working, or the father's in prison, or the mom has substance abuse problems, you got to deal with that too. Because just telling the young person don't carry guns is not going to work if their home life is, you know, a mess.
Right.
And so, you know, one of the programs they did at Boston, again, at the time that Ted was in City Hall, was they said, look, for those young people who are coming from these kind of violent situations, we're going to prioritize them to the top of the service list.
Right.
That they are going to not get a waiting line if they want school tutoring help, or if they want job training. We're going to get them that tomorrow. And we're going to say, this is a group of people that we prioritize services to, so that they don't have a chance to just say, well, they'll never get to me. We're going to get to you right away. Okay. And that was a big part of that, was to learn that we had to, it's not like we have to treat everybody fairly. No, not everybody's risk of exposure and violence is the same.
Right.
We should be treating people more who are more high risk to be victims of violence.
And I would just add that it's really important to have mentors and people who have achieved some level of success coming out of the community,
right.
Going back into the community to say, you know, there are alternatives.
Right.
A large part of the reason, in my experience, that young people decide to carry a gun is that they will sometimes lack the internal confidence to feel that they can traverse the streets or have a life that is going to be a successful life unless they've got this implement with them. And so part of the challenge is to just build up a sense of internal self-worth and confidence that enables a young person to then feel that they have a future.
Right.
If you don't feel as though you have a future, then the risk that you assume of being shot while you are protecting yourself, shooting someone else, it carries a very different value to it. And I think that that speaks to the responsibility that a lot of us have, those of us who have found good jobs, gotten into unions, are construction workers, are academics, are lawyers, teachers, whatever. We have an obligation to go back into our communities and to say, you know, there are ways out of poverty and insecurity and mental health issues without necessarily having to carry a weapon in order to build up a sense of confidence and pride in oneself. I think the street workers, when we put them out in communities at night when they were needed and not during, you know, a 9-to-5 workday, I think that they served as role models for what one could become. And I think that in many of the communities we're working in, those kinds of role models haven't been doing a good enough job in terms of bringing in more to then indicate what the pathways are that can lead to success socially, personally, economically, without necessarily having to resort to carrying a gun.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that, I think it's really right on and important. And we had done a series of interviews with young people in the city of Boston, 14, 15, 16-year-old young people who were saying they needed a gun. And a couple things they told us that had resonated with me. One was, when we talked to them about the future, at 14 they said, I won't be alive at 21. You know, I'm not going to be here. Best case scenario, I'll be in prison or I'm dead. So don't talk to me about, you know, what's happened when I'm 30, because I'm not looking at that. I think I've got, you know, 3 or 4 years, because so many people around them were dying, like the families that you were around. And then the second thing that was so sad to me was one young person killed somebody at 13 and, you know, was going to go to prison for a very long time. And, you know, we were talking to him and he was saying, you know, he really had a goal. He really wanted to have a job, but he never thought he could never get there. He could never get this kind of job. And I said, what do you want to be? He said, a truck driver. And I thought to myself, if you feel that you can't even be a truck driver, then, you know, what's left for you? You know, what are your, you know, this person didn't want to be president of the United States or a doctor, want to be a truck driver.
Right.
And we can't see a pathway for that, to help that young person become a truck driver. That's what they want. That's our job. That's what we should be doing.